everyone, and welcome to the channel within. I'm excited to have Stephen Noack with me here today, and so excited to have this conversation about his NDE and for you guys to hear it as well. Welcome, Stephen, and thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
So, do you want to get started with life before your NDE?
I grew up on the poorer side of town, and it was a very unstable home. We moved a lot. Parents divorced, um, things like that. At least, they were together when I was 4, but it was pretty much shortly after that.
Okay, so yes, why don't we go straight into the NDE?
At 4 years old, I was struck by a motor vehicle when I drove my big wheel, which is a very small plastic tricycle, out into the road. What had happened was I was playing at the neighbor's house across the street, and my brother came on our side of the road. He came to the edge of a road and he said, "It's time to come home." We were going to go to the mall, actually, and just toys lit up in my head. So I left the neighbor's driveway to cross the street, and I didn't really look. So I went between 2 parked cars, and there was a car coming, and she struck me, and she happened to be drinking a little bit that day as well, so she didn't know she hit me. So she hit me and continued going, which put me underneath the car, and she kept going for probably another 20 feet until the stop sign, and then a bunch of people had jumped out and stopped her. What I remember from the incident was it was like a blur, and then instantly I'm looking at myself and I'm above myself, and I see my eyes just roll back into my head like I'm watching this happen. My eyes just roll back, and it's like the end of a movie where everything fades to black, and then it opens up again. And when it opens up again, I'm sitting with someone, and my first instinct or thought uh, is to ask them what happened. So I wake up and I'm sitting and I'm leaning on someone and I'm in their lap, and I open my eyes and my head is kind of down at this point, and I open my eyes and I notice there's like white or silver hair that's almost touching the ground, and there's the bottom of like a robe. No feet or anything. I see the hair and I see this robe, and I turn to ask this person what happened, and it's not a person. It's a figure of light in a hooded robe, and they have no face. There's only light where their face should be. So I kind of pause briefly, and then I ask them what happened. And they say, "Stephen, put your head down. You're in an accident. Everything's going to be fine." And as I put my head down, I just remember a really quick thought, like, how did I just speak without moving my mouth? Like that just came and went. And as I put my head down, I'm now head on the, because I had my head down and I'm leaning on this being. So now I'm looking at this being, and I put my head down and I'm staring at them in the face, and I feel myself start to get pulled. And it wasn't like I was pulled somewhere else. It was like I was stretched. Like I was there, but I was stretched. And so I'm getting pulled into this light that is this being's face. And I'm just going down into light for a little bit. And I don't remember how long it was. But after a little bit of traveling through this light, this scene materializes in front of me. And it's the most perfect nature scene I've ever seen. There's mountains, there's flowers, there's rivers, there's meadows, and I'm noticing how crystal clear and vibrant it is. And that was like the first thing I noticed was how perfect it was. It was like, for anybody watching, it was like watching a glass tube television in like the 1980s, and then you instantly got a high definition television. Because to me now that world is more real than where we are. But everything is perfect, and I noticed the flowers. With flowers I still haven't seen today, I noticed that they were like vibrating and they were alive. And I got this, and I was getting some senses and downloads, I suppose you would call them, but I instantly knew that they were alive, they were their own beings, and that they were choosing to give that beauty and that fragrance, if you will. And I noticed the colors as well were vibrating, and there were so many more colors than it's like color is not even comparable here to there. I noticed these colors are vibrating and they're moving and they're alive. Um, and then I start to notice figures kind of in the distance. There's some closer, and it's very hard to describe, but it's like they were right next to me, but they were far away. Even though I could see them in a distance, they were right next to me. And I'm looking around and I notice figures playing, and I noticed this set of figures off to my left, and it looks like an elderly man and a little girl, and they're playing, and I'm starting to like get the sense that this is the most magnificent carnival or celebration in the world. And I was like, this is, starting to feel awesome. And I see these two figures playing kind of to my left, and the little girl lets out a laugh. And the laugh just kind of goes through the atmosphere and touches me in the center of my chest. And there was some type of reaction, because I instantly knew that hate or pain or suffering couldn't exist there. And it wasn't that it didn't, it couldn't function because this place was vibrating so high. And so I was starting to pick up that this is frequency. This is love. Everything was love there.
And if we could go back to the little girl, did she identify herself, or were you able to recognize her at some point, or no?
Not during. No, not during. It was pretty much, it was almost like being in like a dreamlike state where I'm just going from one situation to the next, to the next, to the next. No identification of the people.
Did you get a chance to look at to see yourself at this point? Were you for and or your higher self, and how did you look, maybe?
How did I look? You could say just a small child. I mean, to me and my reference, I look how I would look as a small child, but pristinely clean. It was like there was nothing on me that had come from earth that I would either think of myself or my blemishes or my flaws. It was like I was perfect when I was there.
And the being was still with you at this time?
The being was with me, but it was more or less I could hear the being now rather than having them standing right next to me. They may have been, but throughout this, I would have thoughts like, what is this? What's that? And the voice of the being would just answer me. Whether that was Creator answering me in the voice, but it sounded like this being who later, in my searches and, my deep soul searching, I asked, who was that? Who was that? Who was that? For years and years and years. And the only answer I got was Elohim. And I had to go find references for angelic beings.
Can you define Elohim for those listening?
Well, if you look in the Bible, there's the word Elohim for God, and then there's a plural version for angels, archangels, beings of Creator that were in the beginning with creation and whatnot. So I'm there and I'm experiencing this, and this energy touches me, and I instantly know that hate, suffering, pain can't exist here, and that it was my home. It was like an instant download. This is where you came from. This is where you're going back to. This is your home. And I started to feel all that love, and naturally I expressed, okay, I want to stay. Without speaking, I expressed that. I want to stay here. And that's when the voice returns and says, it's not your time. We have other things to show you. And it was like this scene was on a screen that was just pulled away, like a curtain, just pulled away. And then all of a sudden I'm standing in what looks like a night sky, but it doesn't have any stars. It's dimly lit. There's a night sky, and I'm instantly taken from this heavenly scene where everything's love. It's perfect. I'm home, and now I'm standing in this room like, what's going on? And as I'm standing there, I start to see these lines form. They're going straight down. They're going straight across. They look like a grid. They're bluish white. They're just coming down, coming down, coming down. They go across, and I have the thought, what's that? And the voice answers me. And the voice says, this is the quantum field. This connects all living beings together as one. I'm like, okay, take your word for it, I guess. So I'm just, what's this? I receive the answer. That fades away. And the next thing I see is this pillar of light that drops down in front of me. And it's just a straight pillar of light. And my mind, of course, if I had a mind at that time, was, what's that? And that's when the being says, this is how you enter the world, as perfect love. And then you're going to spend your energy to have an experience with material reality. All of your experiences and thoughts will be recorded in this screen of as like a record. And when he said that screen, I noticed there was like a 3/4 screen kind of in the pillar of light in the middle. And as he said, or this being said, recorded, I saw like these cords go out from this energy, this pillar of light, started to have these extensions towards the screen. And I'm wondering where are they going? What's in that? And I try to look, and it looks like little TV sets, like little memories or a little scene that you experienced. There were still empty spots, like a lot of empty spots, but there were memories in there. And then the being says, this is a life review, but you're not going to have yours now. You're going to have yours while you're alive. And people don't need to die to undergo a life review. And I'm like, okay. And so that fades. The next thing I see is I'm back in the night sky again, dimly lit. And it's almost like I'm in a projection room or something. But I notice up to my left, there's like, looks like a credit card, but it's missing one corner, just one corner cut off. It has circuits like a motherboard on a computer. And it's kind of lit up. And I think to myself, what's that? And that's when the being says, this is your divine blueprint. This is the original image you were made in. Everyone has one of these. And I'm like, okay, that fades away. And I know everybody's thinking, how do you remember all that at 4? Took a few years to get it back. And it's almost like if I were to ask you, what did you eat last month for lunch on a third Wednesday? Like you knew it happened, but retrieving the information took a little while. It took till I was like 11 or 12. I tried to talk about it. I realized how quickly it made me feel more awkward than I already was. And so I shut it down pretty quick. And so this divine blueprint, this is the original image you were made in, that fades away. And the last thing I saw during the near-death experience was a triangle approaching me. And it's just coming towards me and coming towards me and coming towards me until it's right in front of me. And it's pretty large. And I notice it has a ball on each tip. Each tip has like a ball. And then there's one larger one in the center. And then I think, naturally, what's that? And the being says, this is the Trinity. This is Father, Mother, and Son. Make these three one. So it's like a Cracker Jack riddle for 30 years in my mind. Make these three one. I'm like, okay, that fades away. And I didn't understand until many years later that was a complex physics theory called a triangle singularity. And so it took quite a lot of searching to get to that point. So I come out of this experience. I wake up. I had collapsed lungs, broken ribs, broken shoulder blade, the whole side of my face and body was road rash. It was pretty gnarly for a 4-year-old to undergo. And so I wake up a couple days later, and my first question to my parents was, what happened? And
Were
when
you
they,
in the hospital at this point?
yeah, yeah, I still have the newspaper clippings. They tried to install a street light where I was hit afterwards. Like all the neighbors tried to get a street light there. So yeah, I woke up. I'm in the hospital. I have toys. That's cool. However, I'm like, what happened? And my parents are like, you were in an accident. And I'm thinking to myself, no, that doesn't feel right. So I keep asking what happened, and they're like, you were in an accident. That's it. And I'm like, no, there's more to this. Like there was something profound in me that knew something happened, but I couldn't intellectualize it. I couldn't bring it up in my mind. I was only 4, I suppose.
Sure. Do you want to talk about the triangle singularity now, or or chronologically
Well,
when you
we'll
get
wait till
there?
we get to the later part. Um,
Okay.
but anyway, it's a complex physics theory that really applies to the point of there being no past, present, or future. Uh, that it's in the mind, that it's our mind creating the past to go back and reconfigure data. Um, and so, important for viewers to know that I did not go to college. I did not go to church. My parents never brought me to church. Um, I was not a scholar in any means or way. And so I wake up out of this experience. I'm like wondering what happened. I start to have visions. And my parents would bring me to the eye doctor because I thought there was something wrong with me. Um, I was having these visions my vision would scramble, 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 scramble. And it's like I didn't know what was happening. But occasionally I would have these visions of this line going through every single person on the planet, like lots of people, just this line that went through all of their chests. Some of the people were lit up and some were not lit up. Even though they were all still connected, it was like some were online and some were offline. And so I would have these visions. My parents would bring me to the doctors, nothing wrong. Um, I was always oversensitive, and I didn't realize how much of it came from my NDE. And so around 11, I start to get the memories back of sitting with this being. They start to roll into the things that I experienced and what we had talked about. I try to talk to my parents about it, maybe a few friends, and I realize this doesn't make me feel good, and I learned to shut it down. Now, that was, it was supposed to happen that way, but that was probably the worst thing I could have done because then started years of numbing myself from
Sure.
feeling so intensely. Yes. So I get my first car. I flip that car over at 80 miles an hour 5 times. 2 people ejected out of the car. That was a intense out of body experience as the car is going boom, 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 and people are flying out. And the point I'm making there is, so I had that accident. I had a couple other car accidents, a couple that weren't my fault. I crashed a couple motorcycles. I played sports. By about 35, I was the walking tin man. And I was in so much pain that I was now medicating myself just to be able to go to my full-time job. And that just turned into it numbing myself. It just turned into darkness and despair. I didn't want to be here anymore. I had given up. Like I thought at that point in my life, if there is a God, I don't think God likes me because I had this experience so young. I saw all these wild things, and where are you now? Type of thing when I'm in pain and I'm hurting. And so that was my state of mind. And so I go in to have a routine surgery. I believe, like 33 at that time, 35 maybe. So somewhere around there, I go in to have this surgery, and I start to feel panic. And I hadn't had medication yet or anything. I was literally had just sat down and got changed and put my gown on, and sat there, and I was waiting. And I felt this enormous panic, and I never had a panic attack in my life. So I'm like, what is this? Why is this happening? And and I knew I had to get up and leave. And I didn't know why I knew that, but I'm like, I got to get out of here. I don't know why. And I went to sit up, and then that's when this energy started to encapsulate me. It started at my feet and it went all the way up and around my body, and I could feel the pressure of it and the warmth. And then I could feel this love just start in my center, and it just spread out into my whole body. It was like warm love. And I hadn't felt that except during that experience. And that was the most closest comparable thing, was the love I felt from heaven during my NDE. So I start to feel that energy, and it's so strong. I'm trying to sit up, and it pushes me back down, and it sits me down. And then that's when the voice returns and says, Stephen, put your head down. Everything's going to be all right. And I went, what the? That, because I was awake and I was aware and I was alive, and it was no longer something that happened to me in the past, because that's where I put it. I figured, okay, it just happens when you die. I don't need to talk about it. And so all of a sudden this is happening. It's real. And so right after I make the realization that that's the being from when I was 4, something happened energetically to me that caused almost like a tape rewind. It was like I started to see all these images flash behind my eyes, and I started to feel all of these emotions come up, and I'm getting tingly, and I'm like, what is happening? And so that calms down.
So
I'm
is that the life review that Elohim had alluded to that you will have while you're alive?
kind of, but we'll get to some of that.
Okay. And is this Elohim then who had told you the same statement when you were on the other side?
Yeah, it
Yep.
was the same being. Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah, and so there were many beings. One thing I forgot to include was the screen, that when I was standing near that pillar of light, and they were teaching me that you're going to attach your energy to material reality to have an experience, that there were other beings up above that screen. And they were, I would say they were almost like watchers or judges, not in a bad way, but I could perceive them up there. Um,
So there was no direct introduction, just a feeling of, okay.
no, this is me, and this is none of that. Yeah, it was like just being taken on a ride, I guess you could say. And a lot of this information would be unpacked later, of course, as you know some of. Um, so it's real to me now. It's no longer in my past. It's no longer something that I was like, okay, yeah, it happened. It might be real, might not be. It was definitely real at this point. It had become so real. Um, so I go in and I have the surgery. I calm down. Like, what was that? What was that? I had to go do this anyway. So I go and have the surgery. I come out. About a day or two later, I wake up in the middle of the night because there's balls of light in my room. And I can say they looked like what we would describe as like plasma. They're just these plasma orbs in my room. It started with one the first couple nights, and I woke up and I'm like, is that a lamp? Is that a headlight? Is it? And I'm turning on all the lights in the house. I'm going through everything I can go through. Eventually, I had to go to sleep. So over the next probably a couple weeks, there's more of them. There's like 1, there's 2, there's 3. I don't really know what's happening at this point. I go back to work. At this time, I'm a store manager at a retail video game store full time. I go back to work, and I'm starting to see energy like this, these rainbows wherever I go. I'm like, what is that? What is that? What is that? And there's this rainbow energy around, and that graduates into like telepathy. And that was really scary because I'm like, who is speaking in my mind? Because it wasn't me, it wasn't my voice. And so what I did was, because I was the the manager. I could kind of do whatever I wanted. I would practice with people. I'd have a customer come into my store and ask them questions in my mind, and then I would ask them the same question out loud, starting to figure, okay, when I ask you and it's a 99% match, then I think I'm picking up something. And so I'm having this psychic awakening on top of it. And I was never psychic. I was always sensitive, but like I said, I numbed myself. I numbed and numbed and numbed as much as I could. And I believe it was because I was so sensitive from the NDE. So I'm having telepathy now. It took a bit to figure out that, okay, I'm picking up people's thoughts. And I would have moments at work where I would just burst out laughing, or I would just start crying for no reason, or I would just, I would do things that were uncharacteristic of me, and I couldn't control them. I didn't know why I felt I needed to laugh. I didn't know why I felt I needed to cry. And the next thing was people walking in and me feeling pain in my body. And then they would leave and the pain wouldn't be there anymore. And I'm like, that's weird. What's going on? This went on for a couple weeks until I got up enough courage to ask somebody, hey, you got a pain in your knee? Hey, you got a pain here? And a few people just stopped dead in their tracks and turned around and walked out. Naturally, people were like, yeah, how'd you know that? I don't know how I knew that, and so I was at that point where I didn't really know what was happening after this being returning and speaking to me. This graduated into seeing apparitions. Like wherever I went, I would see these apparitions walking around. They were like humanoid figures. Some were smoky, some were dark, some were light. So that was happening.
Did you have to tone that down so that you are not on all the time,
Yeah, at the time I didn't know how, but eventually yes. And so at the time it was like somebody flipped on a nuclear reactor in my chest of light and I could see. And at first I thought, okay, I'm being haunted or something bad is happening here. That was my first instinct with these humanoid figures that I would see walking around. And I noticed when I would be more irritated, they would move faster. When I was more calm, they'd be nice and slow. And that's important to what I'm going to say later. So at first, I think I'm being haunted. I'm having this energy and these energy surges in me that I can't explain. It's like being a kid on Christmas Eve or waiting for your birthday times 100,000. And I couldn't shut it off. It was just like somebody flicked the light switch on and I could see. And so I'm trying to go to work. I'm trying to function during this. I'm also receiving like synchronicities. Like, I'm like, God, why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to me? And I would just be surrounded by angels, Jesus. I couldn't avoid it. Wherever I went, like, my head would turn, it'd be right there. My head would turn this way, it'd be right there. And so the information was constantly being presented to me. There was one day in particular at work where I went on lunch break and I go into the gas station to pay for gas. And this stuck with me big time. There's a father and a son and just me in there, and they're waiting in line. The son gets out of line and he grabs a peanut butter cup and he turns around to his father and he says, can I have this? And the other hand's empty. He says, can I have this? And the father says, sure. And he goes back in line. He gets out of line again and he picks up just one. Other hand's empty. And he goes, can I have this? And the father's like, yeah, sure. And he goes back in line. And I went, what just happened? Because I knew he didn't ask for another one. I knew he didn't have two. I was like, all right, maybe you're losing your mind. Paid for my gas. Went out into the car, started the car, and the radio was already on. And it's a woman winning a radio contest. So they're talking about the answer. 2 seconds later, the phone is ringing, and they're asking the woman the question, and I already knew the answer because I had just heard it. And so that was like, am I losing my mind? And so that day it was either check yourself into the hospital or go to a church. And I started to go to all these different churches, trying to talk about what I was experiencing in my NDE. And I didn't get much help there. Some of the doors were locked. I was there crying on the doorstep, and I was distraught because I was losing my mind. Now, mind you, my partner at the time wasn't very supportive. She's like, what's going on with you? And et cetera, et cetera. As soon as I started to get certain synchronicities, there was this energy inside me, and it was guiding me, and it was pulling me places. It's like, I feel like I need to go do this. I don't know why, but I need to go do this. And so I would get out of work, and this one day in particular, I went down to the river, and I'm like, all right, I spent a lot of time in nature when I was a kid. So I went down to this river, and I'm like, all right, God, we're here. What do you want from me? And crickets, just absolute crickets. And I'm like, well, thanks a lot. That really helps me. And I walked back to the car, and I got in the car, and I started the car, and I kid you not, the radio was on, and the very first thing to come out of the radio was going down to the river to pray. And it repeated, going down to the river to pray, get washed by the water. And I'm like, okay, so I was supposed to go there to pray. And I'm like, all right, now that the radio is answering my questions, now I got to pay attention to everything. The TV, the radio, all this stuff could be speaking something that I need to hear. And so that was kind of the moment where I was like, I am being guided. This is somehow synchronistic. I need to listen to this energy in me. So I'm still dealing with the apparitions. They're now bothering me at night. I try to go to bed. And again, I was never psychic like that. I'm trying to go to bed, and I would feel pressure in the side of my head. And I would hear conversation after conversation and talking. Oh my God, I just want to go to bed. I thought I was being haunted. So I'm like, leave me alone, get out of here. And that kind of, when I was irritated, they'd be irritated. And like I said, that's important for a little bit. So I'm praying to God, why is this happening to me? I had gone and grabbed a Bible. I had gone and grabbed other books, and my family's like, what's going on with him? Here I was playing video games all the time. I was a store manager. All of a sudden, I wasn't doing any of that. And I'm going to grab these books and stuff. And I grabbed a crucifix during that time. I put it on my wall. And one night when I was having a real hard time, like me and my partner weren't seeing eye to eye, I couldn't get across that, hey, I'm not crazy. I'm experiencing something supernatural. I knelt down at that cross, and I begged God to show me why me. Where's this coming from? And that's when I had a past life vision. And that was the first time I ever believed in past lives. I had a vision. I was looking out of my own eyes, so I could look down and see what I was wearing. I could see my sandals. I could see my tunic. And I'm walking on the sandy road, and it was crystal clear. It was more clear than I see out of my eyes right now. I could see the glint of light off of every grain of sand. So I'm walking on this road, and I look to my right, and I see a river. I look to my left, and I see two rivers, and they converge in front of me. And then the vision ends. And I'm like, well, thanks. That really doesn't help me. And I had the feeling I need to look this up. And I got to I think it was the Euphrates, the Tigris, and the Jordan River. And I'm like, and here I am with chills right now. I'm like, so I was there. I don't know who I was, but I had a past life there. And upon seeing that and feeling that, I'm like, there's something I have to finish here. And I knew that there was something I had to finish. I didn't know what it was, didn't know why. I simply knew there was an unfinished thing in me. So I'm still going to churches to try to find people to talk to. I'm still going to work, experiencing a lot of the psychic stuff, dealing with these apparitions. And that's when I have the really probably big moment that you could call life-changing. I'm driving home. I'm beating myself up. I'm not being a good partner. I'm not being a good father. And at this time, my energy's whoa, whoa, whoa. I can't control anything, where my energy's going. And so I'm really being hard on myself. And this voice starts off to my right, and it starts telling me how beautiful I am, all the people that loved me, and all the people I've helped, and all these. I'm like, wow, that's really different. Because I was also hearing, I was having the psychic hearing and stuff, but this was perfectly crystal clear. Like there was no mistaking what it said as opposed to hearing human spirits. And so I ask, who are you? And then the voice says, in response, I am. And I say, yeah, you are who? And then the voice, second time, I am. And then I say, to God, I heard you the first time. You are who? And then just one more, I am. And then that was it. It was like someone hit me with a lightning bolt. Every single memory I've ever had and every single emotion came shooting up through me at the same time, but separately. And that's all I can describe it as. It was happening at the same time, but I felt it separately. I instantly had to pull a car over. I began crying the hardest I ever cried. I couldn't control it. And it was like someone hit rewind on a tape reel. Boom, 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 boom. Every memory I ever had, along with every emotion. And even though, again, it was happening at the same time, I could feel them separately happening. So there was some sort of unification of duality happening there, singularity, if you will. And so I pulled the car over. Now, mind you, at this time, I didn't know what that phrase meant. I had never heard it before in my life. So I went home and I looked it up. And lo and behold, I find some things for it. And after that day, I'm energetically changed and charged and more sure about what's happening to me, that I can trust it and let go some of the reins of me needing to control how things go.
So did you like surrender then?
Yeah,
And
that was probably,
part of it?
yeah, shortly after. I'm like, this is where I started the surrender of self. Um, and it helped with the guidance that I'm going to receive next. Aside from the angelic beings who would visit, they'd be in my room. I would see this faint rainbow energy, and I could feel them. And they were telling me basically, you're in the war for heaven, and it's taking place in your heart. And there are other beings who want you to stay where you are because they want to harvest your quantum energy. And so they want you stuck. So they're giving me the war in heaven is kind of the war for our energy taking place inside our heart type of stuff. So, which makes sense because heaven is within. And so there's there was this huge rainbow being at the top of my stairs one time. And I'm walking up and I'm like, I walked through it because at this point I'm like, well, what do you want from me? What do you want me to do? I just, sometimes things were said, sometimes they weren't said. I walked straight through this being and I was just, whoa, magnetically charged. So there was a few times they were at my house, but the next thing was really important because when I heard that voice that said, I am, I was skeptical still because of what I was experiencing, thinking these apparitions are here to harm me or haunt me. Now, the apparitions, it was cleared up the day I'm sitting there in my room and just eating a casual bowl of Cheerios. Don't know why that's important, but these beings seem to visit when I ate Cheerios. So
Like
I'm
I
sitting.
said, I think I'm going to try that soon and see what happens.
Yep, I summoned you with a bowl of Cheerios. So I'm sitting there eating these Cheerios, and I feel the whole pressure of the room change. I could feel it on my body, in my chest. And I look in the corner of the room, and if anybody's ever seen the movie Predator, where the predator cloaks himself with this camouflage, it was like that, but very light. I could see there was something there, but I didn't know what it was. Couldn't make it out. And then that's when these beings say, we're the Arcturians. We're from the Galactic Federation of Light. We are part of the Divine Council of Nine, something I never heard of, had to go look up, found all this stuff on it. We're here to assist you with your ascension because you're going to help humanity in the evolution of its species by helping it evolve its consciousness, because you are a keeper of this grid. So they're like, you're responsible for maintaining your frequency that's going to hold the frequency of this grid for the upgrade in human consciousness. And I'm like, what? That's the first time I ever heard any of this stuff. And so I tell them, thanks, but I think you got the wrong guy. You can leave. I don't want anything to do with it. And they leave me with one parting thing that day, which was, you are a divine instrument, but you're out of tune. What's happening to you is not happening to you, it's happening through you. And then I went, oh my God. And I realized, as they imparted to me these words and this information, that these were my projections that I was seeing all around me, moving around. When I got irritated, they got irritated. So these were the wounded aspects of myself that I was hiding in my subconscious mind. I was given a gift to see it, that this is the mechanism and the place that you're in. Your body is not the real world. That's the real world. And so I'm like, wow, there's a lot of wounded me's walking around. And that's what started the life review. And they walked me through how to do that. So the second time they visited me, I was a little more apt to listen. Now, mind you, I'd never heard of the Galactic Federation. I had to go look it all up.
Yeah. So. Can you define that for people listening who may not be familiar?
Define what?
The Arcturians, Council of Nine, who they are.
Well, they're extraterrestrial, but they're more interdimensional, where they're like frequencies. We have different layers of consciousness. There's different layers of beings who all serve this one source that we came from. Not all aliens are good, but these are the ones working to help humanity evolve past itself, because that's our issue, is the duality. And so they were teaching me about non-duality and how to unionize the two poles, positive and negative, that are in our body into one. And that would be, a few years of teaching. They would give me info. They would leave me alone for a bit. They would give me info, leave me alone for a bit so I could integrate it. But they're interdimensional cosmic beings who also serve the source and are a bit different, but not unlike the angelic beings that I connected with, because they exist inside all of us. They're a frequency that a lot of us seem to not attain. We don't reach that frequency or that space.
Yeah. Is that the reason for the offline, online
I believe
that you were
so.
seeing? Okay.
I believe it was the mind and the heart were disconnected. And that was big for what was told to me next. Was they came and visited me a second time after I looked up the information and I softened a bit. And I'm like, all right, maybe this is real. And again, it wasn't like these human spirits that I was hearing at the time. Very hard to hear. I wasn't too sure. Leave me alone. They were crystal clear. And so the second time they visited me, they talked about the Trinity. They said, this Trinity that you saw during your NDE, this is not just Father, Mother, Son. This is also Heaven, Earth, Son. This is also mind, heart, body. And so they were giving me these different interpretations. And so I would go get books, As Above, So Below, Make Heaven and Earth One. And I'm starting to read all this, and they tell me you have a sun in the center of your chest. And that's what Jesus was trying to show you, that you have a portal or a singularity, which is like kind of like a black hole, but but in definition. You have a sun or a singularity in the center of your chest that you can use to unify all realities that you have lived. And so now we're talking past, present, and future. So they told me I needed to start connecting father, mother, and son as one. I needed to start literally speaking this into my body and reconnecting my mind with my heart and my heart with my gut. And that this Trinity that I had seen was a circuit, but that we had become disconnected from the circuit. And now it was time to tune my divine instrument to reconnect this circuit of life force energy. And they explained that I was primarily being short circuited out into the past to reconfigure data. And this was draining me repeatedly before I could cultivate enough energy to rise and heal myself. So at the time, I'm still going through pain. They talk about the Trinity. They tell me I need to make these three one, known to my body, known to my nervous system. So I have to be the one to inform my nervous system. Mind, heart, and body are one. Father, mother, son. And so that puts me on another journey of Gnostic books. I'm looking for all these references. And I find my way back to Egypt, where there's a solar trinity. And then I'm like, okay, this stuff's making sense, the info they're giving me. Then they talk about the divine blueprint that I saw. So this was the promise of Christ. This is the image of creator that you were made in. All you have to do is believe you are this image and stop believing you are the images others are giving you. And this will restore you back to wholeness. They said this is an image that's in your DNA. It's already there for you to unionize your conscious and subconscious mind because they became disconnected. And so when they're disconnected, we're powered down. When they're connected, we're kind of powered up because I'm in control of the subconscious. And so they told me about the promise of Christ being this image that I was made in, that it was an original blueprint to restore me back to what I was before I had inherited programs from the world.
Exactly. So it's like we get all these conditioned beliefs. Everybody tries to, school, our parents, everybody tries to tell us who we are.
Yep.
And here you are getting the insight to let go of all of that and return to our true essence.
Yeah.
That's
And
beautiful.
it was beautiful, but it wasn't easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because like you got to let people go and you got to let images of yourself go and start speaking into your mind that I was already whole. I was already forgiven. I was already loved. And so start to bring that online. And so there was guidance in the divine blueprint. There was guidance in the Trinity.
How many of them were there, by the way, Stephen?
The Arcturians, there was like
Yeah.
3 or 4 that day. But again, I could only sense that. It was hard to see. It was almost like they were in this plasma that I could barely see. It was kind of like it was like wavy and a little distorted. So I knew there was something in the corner of my room and I could feel them. First I felt them and then I saw them and then they interacted with me. But as they came back, they began to, help me work with the Trinity to restore my mind, heart, and body, help me work with my divine blueprint so I could reunionize my conscious and subconscious. And they explained to me, you come into the world and you're handed these programs. And this tips the polarity in your body, because this was really a polarity issue, positive, negative, neutral. This tips the polarity to the negative side. And now you have this misalignment that runs back through your body and you think you are this misalignment. And so they were teaching me that I can uninstall these programs and reinstall programs in its place and restore the balance and polarity. And then they were telling me your body's a lot like a battery, where it's a salt and potassium vehicle for you to interface with material reality. But you're the being of energy playing the character. You're not the
And
body. And I'm
I
like,
like,
damn, that's heavy.
yeah, I like the video game and the software analogies that you could relate to. But
Hmm.
yeah, like you said, although very beautiful, it's also so much inner work that you had to
It was
do.
jarring. Yeah. For a while. And then I felt this beautiful opening. And so I'll get to that in a bit. But so the first couple meetings, they were teaching me about the things that I had experienced during my NDE. And they told me, you don't have to die to go back to heaven. And that was big for me because when they would visit me, I wouldn't have any pain. And then when they would leave, I'd have the pain return to my body. And when they told me that, and I'm like, yeah, because if I'm not feeling pain now while they're around, I can get there again. I don't have to wait for that. I don't have to wait, in other words. And so that started my deep purification of the self journey. And they were teaching me about the multidimensionality of human nature. And I was seeing those apparitions that were me, but how to unify them.
So is this like you existing in different realities parallel to what's going on, and you're getting a peek behind the veil? The veil is thinning, so you're seeing all that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm seeing all these other me's, and some weren't happy, some were, and some weren't. Um, but during that time that they're working with me, they're teaching me how to heal my body. Uh, I'm outside one night, and this is crazy because I'm sitting in the chair and I'm just like relaxing. The sun just went down. I'm looking at the stars. Cool. All of a sudden, I feel myself getting lifted. And I'm like, all right, what's happening? And then it was just like, whoom. I was out of my body. I was in this white light. I had no pain and I couldn't even feel the chair anymore. I had no reference at all to where I was. And then that's when these other beings come in and they're like, we're the Sidereal. We're here to
Can you
explain.
define those as well
No,
for people listening?
they're angelic beings. That's all I can tell you.
Okay.
And they're a race of angelic beings who specialize in particular uh, issues or things.
So how did they look in contrast to the
They didn't. I didn't
Arcturians?
see anything. It was all white light. So I was up in this white light, and they say we're the Sidereal, and I had to bounce this name. I'm like, what are you talking about? So I had to contact quite a few people before I found one of my good friends, who's a friend now, who has had dealings and connections with these beings. They said we are an angelic uh, race that's much more like machine. Uh, they said you're an energy playing a character inside a quantum computer, and you logged in to have this experience. And then,
Wow.
yeah, and they said you're in a virtual reality experience, but you forgot because your senses are so real to you, and you became attached to them. Um, they said that they talked about the singularity coming, that it's going to happen for mankind, that we're going to be unifying, and that I'm going to be seeing. This was before COVID, so like you're going to see things that don't make sense. You're going to see chaos. You're going to see natural disasters. You're going to see a lot of things that come to claim your sovereignty. They're coming for your identity, your sovereign identity. And I'm like, okay. And so they give me the your energy playing a character. You're storing too many old programs on your hard drive, and this is why you're having an issue. They need to be uninstalled, and you need to reinstall new programs. So they're giving me a picture and an image, and they're showing me I have an operating system, I have a hard drive, and in between there, I had lost the programmer status. I had lost my administrative password. Okay. I created a password and forgot what it was, apparently, like we all do. And
I
so
love the analogies.
yeah, and they said it's time for you uh, to, wasn't do what you agreed to. It wasn't like that harsh, but it was time for you to remember what you came here to do. And I was like, starting to get some of that back through all the supernatural stuff. I'm starting to get this feels familiar. I'm here to do something. Um, so then I sink back into my body. Here comes the pain again. I'm like, son of a. And, that's what another event that really started me on the journey of no pain. The next visit I had was really a lot of downloads, a lot of images. They were showing me that, and these were the same beings, the Sidereal, that normally most people's nervous system is in an alternating current and they're being polarized and they're being pushed out of their body and they're getting drained before they have the ability to cultivate enough energy to heal the body. He said, normally you're an alternating current. We're going to help you unify your consciousness into a direct current or a stationary ground state. And they said, we're going to use your 0 point energy to do this. And this is the first time I ever heard of 0 point energy. However, I understood that it had something to do with the sun and the Christ in the center of me, and that it was a point of neutrality. It was a grounding energy. And so I went on the research. I'm like researching. And so 0 point energy is the once thought to be empty space in our cells in between the positive and negative. And I'm like, so they start teaching me how to embody my 0 point energy so I can ground myself in the middle of these poles. And they're like, you're the one feeling your feelings. You're not the feelings themselves. So they're with me the whole time as I'm practicing this non-attachment. I'm starting to learn reality's happening through me. It's not happening to me. And I can allow these to pass as the observer. And they're teaching me how to become non-objective about myself, really. And that humanity is going to go through this upgrade into a more energy-based being in the future. And like I said, they told me I was going to see a lot of stuff that didn't make sense, catastrophes, and all this other stuff. So I went and got food. That's what really made me look crazy. I went and got water and dry food because they're like, go get some food, go just put stuff away just in case. And we've seen it where people had needed it, where, floods hit in places where you never thought. So they were telling me to do that. That kind of made me look crazy to my family too. And so now I'm like on this journey alone. And I'm still at the video game store. I'm having dreams after these extraterrestrial things. I would wake up covered in sweat. And it was the only time I'd ever be covered in sweat would be when I had these dreams where I'd be on this ship. And the dreams could be a week or two apart. It could be a month apart. But every time it would be the same ship and I'd be covered in sweat. And so the very first one, I was in a medical bay. And I could see myself. I had a white suit on. I was bald, very clean. And I understood because they were telling me that they had to do something to my energy before they would allow me to walk. And now I'm not sure if I'm being abducted at night or if I'm being taken or what's going on. But they're walking me through the ship. They're showing me these pods of these highly advanced souls that were ready to come to Earth. And so I'm walking around this big room and there's these pods. And inside these pods are like this soul energy or these souls. And they were like, all I could say, it was like they were children, but they weren't children like souls. When I walked past them, I could feel their intelligence just dripping on me. I mean, it was amazing. I would wake up with the feelings in my body. And so those dreams went on for a few months. And with that came memories of me as a being of light, no robe like the being I met during my NDE, just me as a being of light, a couple other beings next to me, and we're standing at this console and we're programming. And then whoosh, I log into the experience. And so I know I gave a lot of information, so I'm trying to make sure I don't go too far off of baseline.
So
So I'm at
the children energy, is that the kids that are about to be born, that they are coming with a whole new, upgrade, if
yeah,
you
they
will,
have
and
a
will.
different consciousness grid that they're attached to.
I'm excited for that because that will definitely help us to raise our frequencies, hopefully, just by being among them.
And a lot of them, believe it or not, uh, have autism and chose to work in that spectrum because they're able to, and if you've heard of the telepathy tapes,
Yes.
they're able to work, and that world is real. Our world, I don't know how real this hand is, but they're able to work in that quantum space very easily with their wiring diagrams, if you will. And so that as these beings are visiting me and they're teaching me how to heal, they're teaching me how to rewire the nervous system and how to reverse the polarity in my body so that I began to release and integrate the negative charge that was stored in my cells. And so they're showing me literally like magnets, where two magnets stick together. If you flip one over, it pushes the other one. They're showing me how to reverse the polarity in my body. And I'm like, okay, what's going on with my body when this happens? What's going on when this happens? So I start looking in the neuroscience books, and I'm arriving at action potentials and certain things that happen to our cell membranes when a high enough voltage is introduced into the body and it crosses a threshold. And so I'm finding all this information to match up with what's happening. I go to work one day. I have this woman fall down outside my store, and she's in obvious pain. She hits the cement. She's an elderly woman. She's crying and groaning. And someone comes out from next door. I'm the first one to see her. I say, go call the people. I'll stay with her. And when they went to go call the people, I put my hand on her back. And all of a sudden, like 3 seconds later, she turns to me and she goes, I'm all warm and I have no pain. And I was like, whoa, what was that all about? As she said that, I could feel the warm go up my arm. EMTs came. I went back to work and I couldn't stop thinking about it. And so there was something now physically presenting itself into my reality where I touched somebody. And then there was a few other things where, like, I would call people and I'd be like, yeah, you wanted me to call you? And they're like, no, but I was thinking about calling you. And to me, it felt like I was supposed to call this person back. It felt totally normal. So that was a little freaky. I started to look into healing. I wound up leaving that job, believe it or not, because it was just too invasive, too much psychic stuff. I couldn't balance myself with dealing with the public. I went into service with like senior care. So I worked with Alzheimer's and dementia for probably
That, Stephen?
It was beautiful. Another 6 years. And I learned so much while I was doing the job. There was one day, and I'll tell you something in particular. I was cleaning silver. This elderly person was like, hey, you got to clean my silver. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that. Come on. And so I'm doing it, and I wanted to put it down. And instantly, I knew that that silver was me. And that if I didn't do a good job on that, then I'm not doing a good job on the inner me. And I picked it back up, and I shined that thing spotless. And I felt wonderful. And then I went home, and I never gardened, and I didn't know why. I'm like, I have to start a garden. I don't know why. That's it. I went and got the stuff, and I started gardening. And as I'm doing it, I could feel things inside me happening. And so I'm realizing this is an inner outer experience. This is a mirror, and I'm interacting with myself in this mirror in many different forms. And so I'm at work one day, and I'm looking at this elderly person in the eyes, and they weren't all there. They would say things that would just answer what I was thinking. And it would be clearly said. And I'm like, God? And I'm like, God? And then I realized that God, Creator was working through every single one of these people to help me learn about love. And like, that's how loved I was. And once you realize that every single eye you look into and face you see is Creator, it changes things. And so I realized, wow, that means if I don't do a good job, then that reflects on my relationship with my creator if I don't care for this person in the way creator cares for me. So that revealed a whole love story that I was supposed to have with creation itself and not be too worried about people and characters. I was starting to feel this fountain open up in me, truthfully, and it was the only love that ever loved me for who I was and all the weirdness and everything else. And that love started to stay with me, and that's where I have no pain. When I go outside of that love, I will have pain coming back into my body. When I stay inside that love and see myself as creator sees me, I have no pain.
So it's like you brought the energies, the love frequencies from heaven down to meet you here on earth.
I would I would say I either brought him down or I went there and jailbroke it.
Yes.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
was like, I'm
Yeah.
getting back into heaven,
Yeah. Yeah.
one way or the
Exactly.
other. Then
Thanks for
eventually,
that story.
yeah, and eventually I realized, maybe I can help people. Somebody's like, hey, you might be able to help this person. And so it snowballed slowly. Um, and now I do this full time, as you know. I go around speaking and I do healing. One of the big things they taught me is that we're not separate, right? We're all connected, and that I can use quantum entanglement to help someone heal or facilitate their healing, even if they're in another continent. Like I have clients all over. I just had somebody in Glasgow, and we're all connected to the same energy. So when we go to connect to that energy, they taught me how to code photons, to code light with specific frequencies and send those to begin helping the light or energy of that person vibrate in the same frequency. And so there was the quantum entanglement. So they taught me all about quantum entanglement. And so I'm getting physics books, and people are still looking at me like I'm kind of weird. But I had found the most beautiful, important thing in my life, and I've witnessed miracles, and I'm still shocked. Like I had this woman email me. Well, I had this child in Canada. It was a toddler, and he was in the hospital, and he was on a ventilator, and his lungs were bad, and all this other stuff was going on. His oxygen was low, and I did a session for him. Didn't charge anything. He's a kid. Maybe I can help. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to help him. Next morning, and I still have these testimonials. He's off the ventilator, oxygen all the way up. A few days later, he comes home, and he's growing, and he's eating food that he wouldn't eat before, and he's doing all these things he wouldn't do before. And so, yeah, I've had clients come to me with healing. I've had negative entities and all this stuff. But the triangle singularity is where it's at. When I make my mind, heart, and body one, past, present, and future become one. Because my body and my mind, they want to go relive the past, but it never happened. It was all the moment of now. And so I had to practice singularity to become it. And then I remember the day I went, oh my God, I'm my future self guiding my past self in the present moment. Like we did it. And I realized a lot of the information that I was receiving was from the future. It was from the future me. And so, for the sake of time, I'll pause if you want to ask any questions.
Yeah, so it's like all the selves, the past, present, and future you are able to influence each other. And so the future self is kind of helping you out here. That is
Right.
just
And
remarkable.
and they
Again.
taught me that the image of God that I was made in was me in quantum superposition, meaning I am the same me in every time, space, and dimension. I no longer have to adhere to the definition or characters of others. But that's what it was really about, because that's where we get drained. That's why people feel fatigue and sluggish, because we're always going into these alternate realities. And so they taught me how to unify every alternate reality into one truth.
Yes,
And
to bring it back here, right?
yep,
Yeah.
they taught me how to work with the knowing or gnosis, to speak to cells and pain and heal things. And so a big part of it was knowing and teaching me how to send that knowing signal down through my body to magnetize my cells. And naturally, I it was importantly, it stressed upon me that I do not give my identity to the world ever again, and that I identify myself as something the world can't hook into. And so they were really big about identity because that's where things come in. That's where we leave vulnerability access points. In other words, if I see myself simply as sovereign energy that already had permission to be human, you're going to have a hard time modulating my identity. So I'm the modulator of my identity. You are not. So if you come to modulate my character identity, I already see you're the enemy or adversary. Yeah, I have something to learn from you, but you won't come into my nervous system because it's the place I live in as an energy. Before I interface with the world, I'm arranging data in my nervous system, and then I'm going to interface with the world. So we're the being in the nervous system who kind of gets trapped, and I can only go here and here because I'm storing so much emotional charge from experiences. And so it's important for people to understand that they're the one who had the story. They're not the story themselves. They're the ones who had the experience. You're not the experience itself. And so non-attachment and neutrality gives you the power to decide. And this is really about free will, because we were in bondage to duality, to our lower self, and now we're unifying it and freeing ourselves.
That's a really nice explanation of, a summation of everything. I have a question with regards to the acceptance or the integration of the NDE itself. It happened at 4. You tried to talk about it when you were 11. So when were you able to really accept and talk about it freely?
The talking came after the helping people heal. So somebody was like, "Hey, do you want to share your story?" I was already doing a little healing at that point. And I'm like, "Yeah, maybe, okay." And then that snowballed. And I was probably 42, 43 when I felt comfortable enough to say, this is my story to have between me and God. Like, it's not about you. So I could care less what you think. I had to get a little angry to do it. Okay. Like, this is mine. You're not going to take it from me type of anger, as opposed to just being angry for no reason. And you'd be surprised at how much still today I'm attacked. Like, I wasn't somebody who went searching for God. I didn't have a religious background. I didn't search for aliens. It happened to me, and I'm using it to help people. Um, but yeah, it took probably about 42, 43 around there before I felt comfortable enough to speak about it.
I'm really glad that you did the hard work in accepting it and being able to share it and helping raise consciousness. And I am I really enjoyed this conversation. And there are 3 questions that I have for you.
Sure.
What brings you joy and laughter these days, Stephen?
What brings me joy and laughter
Yeah.
is watching humanity. And I can get more now out of watching parents and children play, or two people who are a couple enjoy a moment together. I can feel it, and how beautiful and precious and sacred every moment and thought is. And I feel it. And I can feel it more watching humanity, even than experiencing it myself. It's like not even about me. So I would say it never gets old watching humanity.
What would you say to young Stephen who's about to embark on the greatest adventure of his life?
So, young Stephen, I would say buckle up. And I would say don't give away your power in who you are or your authenticity, to keep your authenticity and not shrink yourself to fit in or be accepted.
And what final message or blessing do you have for those listening? What would you like people to know about the messages you received?
Sure. One final message I could give people is to start thinking and acting and speaking as if it already is. And your body will follow this programming. Your body does not have a separate brain. It's not going to say, no, it's not. If you say it is and you are convinced of it, this will help heal your body. And so I want people to heal and feel better. You want to signal to your body, thank you, Creator, for already making me whole. Thank you for already validating me. Thank you for already loving me. And in the terms of the collective, I would say we are eternal beings. We have all the time in the world to do this. Don't rush. Don't worry. Don't fear. You're going to see things that don't make sense, but to stay connected to the source of love, to find yourself a source of love that is not a person to get it through, to find that source and cultivate it, whether it's the trees, the sun, the flowers, animals. Cultivate as much of that as you can because it's everywhere, and creation is reaching out to you saying, I want to have a love story with you.
Wow, that's beautiful. How can people reach you, Stephen?
Sure, you can reach me at trinityquantumhealth.com. That's trinityquantumhealth.com. And I run groups like every month. I try to make a group that where like I have private sessions, but I also have a group every month where if people can't afford it, I just let everybody in because I feel what happened to me. I was a skeptic. I still am. I still have to have something happen and happen until I believe it. But I feel what happened to me is for everybody. I don't think I'm special. I think what I saw and what I witnessed and what I experienced are a system that we're all in and that everybody deserves to know. So they at least have a choice in their free will or not, you know?
Yeah, thanks so much for doing what you do. And I hope that everyone is enjoying this conversation as much as I do. Thank you for being here with me today, Stephen.
Thank you for having me. It's been wonderful.